Simon, you're in Dubai. I'm in Europe, actually in Italy right now. So we're seeing the world from slightly different perspectives, geographically only. I think Churchill said something like, "The further you look back, the longer you can look ahead." Um, and this is so true that if no politician, no analyst, nobody actually studies and understands history, and that what we're seeing has happened time and time again. I believe, like you, that we are at the end of a major monetary era. And this one is so big that it is going to end in sadly, a catastrophe for the world. Obviously, this too will pass also, but it will take time. So I think the time that now is so important from the point of view of protecting against risk. And as the risk is more elevated than ever right now, um, I think protecting against this is so important, and it can come from anywhere. I mean, you're analyzing this from many angles, especially from the geopolitical side. What do you see right now as the biggest risk uh, for the world, and what actually do you recommend people to do about it?
Which is the biggest risk? There are so many of them. I think the biggest risk, and it won't play out for another 2 to 3 years, is whether the world retains the unilateral structure dominated by America, or whether it transcends into a multilateral world, basically led by Russia, China, and now India. I think what we saw at the SCO and the bilateral meetings in Beijing, followed by the military parade, was really a game changer.
Yeah.
And I think that
I mean, the three holding hands was obviously a very strong message to Trump. Not?
But I think what was really important is the way that Modi, who had been playing a two-step dance with Trump and with Russia and China, has now gone into a quick step right into the hands of Putin and Xi. So how is he going to respond to what he's seen happening in Tianjin and Beijing? First of all, it's very clear that the big BRICS members, Russia, China, India, and Iran, are not going to back down. And equally, Russia is going to stand firm on its issues over Ukraine. And I think that what will emerge is that China is going to stand firm on tariff and trade issues. So the message that comes out of the SCO meetings and all the bilateral ones is time for action. So talk is yesterday, action is for the future. How soon do things break up? I think that you can already see in the last few weeks that Russia is increasing the tempo of taking control of what it wants. And then on the other side, you've got the delusional leaders in Europe, principally the EU3, Starmer, Macron, and Mersk. They want more. They don't want peace. They want war to detract the electorates from the problems that they have. Debt, immigration, and electorate discontent with the power of Brussels. How can we find a distraction for our population? In the UK, I'm hearing in the sort of military intelligence setup that ex-military people are setting up militias to defend people as we effectively move into a form of civil war.
Yes, and I'm sure you've seen that there are supposed to be 50,000 or more than registered terrorists in the UK, and they haven't registered themselves. That's for certain. So there is also a proper plan for these people who are going to make trouble in coming years. That to attack infrastructure, to attack water, energy, etc. Are you aware of this? Familiar with this?
I did hear from the same source that this group of terrorists, they're waiting for the message to come out of some mosque. So, I mean, it can happen any day.
And it's not in the UK only. I mean, you have the
No.
same in Germany, the
Yeah.
same in France. I hear, there are lots of terrorist cells in Sweden because it's been such an easy country to set these up. So the risk is everywhere in Europe, isn't it?
I think the risk is high that these delusional European leaders are going to move into Ukraine for the reasons we've just discussed. What's the first thing that they're going to do? Well, the first shot that's fired, funds, if they've not already left Europe, will be flooding out. And then the EU will put in place capital controls.
Absolutely.
And
Yeah.
what are the global repercussions of capital controls in Europe, given the interconnection of the global financial system?
Yes, but what you say in Europe, but I'm absolutely convinced that we will have capital, or not we, that there will be capital controls in the US also. The dollar will be under attack, the financial system will be under attack, and people want to transfer money out of dollars, and are actually doing it now already. We see it. We're seeing Americans. There's been reports, a lot of reports about, especially the big banks in America, looking after wealthy families and individuals. That they're transferring a lot of money into Switzerland and also into gold, of course. So there are not many places to flee to, are there?
No.
I think Dubai is obviously fantastic now, but it is next to the Strait of Hormuz. It can't be nearer than it is. It's so near. There has always, throughout history and even throughout my lifetime, been major conflicts in the Middle East, and of course, then Dubai will be exposed also.
Yeah, I've obviously given this a lot of thought because I live here. And my take is that there's a long history of the UAE and Iran working together. And there's a large Iranian expat force living in Dubai. There's a very modern and large Iranian school. The conclusion I come to is that if America is stupid enough and Israel is stupid enough to launch a really destructive attack on Iran, I think the agreement or the hidden agreement between Tehran and Abu Dhabi is, we will leave you alone, but we are going to attack and destroy the American base in your country. Fortunately, the American base is right out in the desert. So,
yeah, but and close the Strait of Hormuz also.
yeah.
Wouldn't you expect? Yeah.
Oh, yeah, sure.
Absolutely. So that affects 20 up to 25% of the oil in the world, which obviously in itself was a massive acceleration of the downtrend of the world economy.
The impact, the population will be a huge increase in inflation because
Yes.
everything of importance and food, most food is imported.
Mm.
What shipping lines will be prepared to ship into this region?
Yeah.
Mantras that I give to friends here is make sure that your deep freezers are full of food all the time.
Mm.
In fact, it's a mantra I give to everybody because I think that food prices over the next 2 years are going to soar.
I agree totally.
I mean, already in July this year, 7.6%.
Yes. And you mentioned the inflation, the fake inflation figures in the US, for example, and most of the world. Everybody is manipulating inflation figures downwards. And of course, the US has done it since the 80s, as we know, when they changed the method of calculating inflation. So inflation has always been several percentage points higher than has been reported. And of course, I, like you, but part of my longer term forecast has always been having experienced in the UK the 1970s and having experienced inflation of 15% or so for 5-7 years. And so there you can see the difference between a well-managed economy and a very badly managed economy. And of course, I think that trend is going to accelerate now, not just for the UK, but for all of the EU.
Oh, global, no question. Coming back to what you said about the manipulation of the American inflation data, I read a report which was promptly deleted that Larry Summers and his team took the CPI workings back to 1983 and concluded that CPI last year was 9%. What was consumer spending in nominal terms last year? 3%. And the guy I follow, John Williams of Shadow Government Stats, he takes workings back to pre-Arthur Burns days. And inflation on his workings was 10.8% last year.
Yes. Yeah, so I've been believing for quite a while. I mean, part of my long-term forecast, that I clearly saw at the end of the 90s already, and this is why I decided that we need to protect ourselves. You never know when it's going to happen exactly, and that's why we said, this is going to come. The end of a monetary era is coming. That's absolutely clear in my mind. Within that, well, of course, we will have ups and downs. We will have stock market bubbles. We will have crashes. But one thing I've learned that to forecast price is a mug's game, and it serves very little purpose.
Equities is even a bigger mug's game.
From the end of the 90s, I decided that the risk is absolutely at a maximum already, and it's going to accelerate and get worse. Protection, of course, from my point of view, there's only one asset that has survived throughout history and maintained its value, and that's nature's money, which is gold.
Sure.
And all other currencies, as we know, have gone to zero. So it's so easy. If you want to protect your assets, your old nature's money, and that at least, as it has been the case for thousands of years, you maintain your purchasing power. You might not always make a lot of money, but in now when we have entered an era,
wealth,
exactly. But now when we've entered an era where governments are accelerating the money printing, and because their deficits is also accelerating. Now it's such an easy decision. I think this is the easiest investment decision I've made in my life. So, we recommended up to 50% in gold 25 years ago. And now I would recommend, 100%, or of that, we recommend maybe 25, 30% in silver. I mean, it's obviously putting all your eggs in one basket. But it's like Rockefeller said, you put all your eggs in one basket and look after the basket. Because I see now, and this is going to accelerate. The currencies have gone down by 99% in real terms, in gold terms, since 71. It's just 1% to go. But that 1% is 100% from now. And that we are going to experience in the next few years, in my view. How fast it goes, it doesn't matter really. Protection is more important than, as I said, forecasting the timing. And I see you talking about cycles of markets going up for a while and then going down. Yes, you're obviously into shorter cycles. I don't really, in my world, we don't worry about that. We worry about protecting the risk that you have today, and there are so many black swans hanging above us. And U.S. banking system, for example. They'll all be there. The dollar, the euro, the pound, etc. I mean, as we said, they're already 99% on the way. So it's not far to go.
And
Yeah.
DXY is now about 97, and we have it at 50 in 2028. What does that mean to the gold price?
Yes. And I've been saying that for quite a while, that it serves no purpose to measure the gold price in collapsing currencies because it's meaningless. You
Yeah,
might as well
yeah,
measure it in chickens or cows or something more useful because I mean, gold and silver should only be measured by weight, really. How many kilos or how many ounces do you own? That's the only thing that counts. You
yeah,
know that you will maintain purchasing power, and if it will be $1 billion for an ounce of gold in a few years' time, or 1 million or whatever, it's totally irrelevant because what's the value of the dollar at the time? And that's why, as I said, I gave up forecasting the gold price many years ago because it is a mug's game, and to forecast it in something that is sinking by the day serves no purpose.
yeah,
And what I mean, I see the U.S. banking system. I mean, it's not going to survive in its present form, and nor is the European one, of course. So keeping money in the bank. I mean, I wouldn't recommend anyone to hold any money except for short-term spending money. If you have gold or silver, it's total liquidity. You can sell a gram an ounce whenever you want, and there's always a price for it. There's always a price. So therefore, being in the banking system, in my view, is a major risk. And yes, you talk about capital controls in Europe, but don't you see? I mean, I see clearly that the same is going to happen in the US.
I agree completely.
Yeah. So where do people go? That's what they ask, of course. They don't want to be in the EU. EU, no. I mean, Switzerland always has been a better and a stronger economy than the rest of Europe. Now, of course, Switzerland is under pressure from the EU to uh, you know, come into the EU net and comply with more of the laws and the rules of the EU. But Switzerland is withstanding it, and of course, as Switzerland sees the EU collapsing, when I believe that the Switzerland will definitely stay outside of the EU network. And anyone can drop at any time, whether it's, as we said, social unrest, whether it's war, whether it's financial collapse of the financial system or the banking system, which, in my view, is absolutely inevitable. It's going to happen. It's only a question of when. It cannot be saved. No one is going to repay any debt. They just create new funny money.
Absolutely, absolutely. Yeah.
Yeah, and then
I mean, under target 2, look how much Germany is owed by
yes,
Greece, Italy, etc., etc. That's never going to be repaid.
no, no. And it's the same in the US debt's never going to be repaid. And when you have a financial system with the dollar as the reserve currency, um, being in a country which is issuing massive amounts of debt, federal debt on a daily basis, and there's no buyer of it except for the central bank itself.
come back to where I started, that the real big picture is between the existing unilateral world that has operated for 80 odd years and the evolving multilateral world. It can only end in one of two ways. Either that the unilateral world, i.e. America, accepts that we are evolving into a multilateral world and therefore joins it. That's, under current conditions, is highly unlikely. The only other option is it's going to be war.
But excuse me, isn't there a third option? America doesn't have to accept it. The dollar-based system and the reserve currency collapses. The financial system in the US collapses. The banking system collapses. Whatever desperate action they take with, like with the whole Trump family now going into Bitcoin or cryptocurrencies and believe that that's going to be, the savior of everything. That's not going to happen. In my view, cryptocurrencies are a bubble too, highly leveraged. And therefore, that third risk, I think that's a major risk that it's actually led by the financial system collapsing in the West, probably in the US first, but it could be France or the UK starting.
Now, you actually have given the trigger as to how this war between the two types of world will end by saying, rightly so, that the US and the Western system, financial system, is going to collapse. And in that collapse, you will then have political collapse.
And military collapse.
Everything collapse. On my cycle timing, that is around 2028.
Okay.
So that's only, where are we now, 3 years away.
That's like tomorrow, because that's and obviously with that comes helping family and friends and all of that. I see that as a major task of ours and for people who are privileged like we are, because whether it's 25 or 28 or 29, it doesn't really matter. The risk is here and now.
If it's 28, it's only 3 years away.
That's exactly. Simon, we're going to have many of these discussions, I hope, in the future. I really enjoy speaking to you. This world is going to move very fast, and it's so fascinating to try to understand what's happening. Although we understand the big picture very well, both you and I, of course, in the short term, there's so much that can happen, and we certainly will want to keep our listeners or viewers abreast of that. So why don't we finish this time, and hopefully we'll come back, Simon, and
very much. I would love to. I've much enjoyed it.
Yeah.
So much more one can talk about, but
yes.
Leave it to another day.
Yes, let's do that. Okay, thank you very much.